If getting dressed is really hard for you, you do not need more clothes. You need the right ones, and what you need is reliable pieces.
If you're building out your capsule wardrobe for the first time, these are the 10 pieces you absolutely need. The 10 pieces you absolutely need. The 10 pieces you absolutely need.
I should start by saying that I, Khaki, am not a minimalist. I do not self-identify as a minimalist. However, I did go through the minimalism journey the last time that it swept the internet. It's coming up on 10 years ago at this point, which puts it in the outskirts, but I still would consider it to be what? A recession indicator. I mean, especially in the context of having fewer things, the allure of spending less.
Do you ever feel cluttered when you have too much stuff while feeling the pressure of life's daily struggles on your mind? This is why I choose to live minimally.
Here are a few things that I do for a minimal and clutter-free home. A few other ideas are storing toilet rolls in a wicker basket and also rolling up fresh white towels and storing them in the shower.
The allure of having an aesthetically appealing lifestyle. It's a lot of the ways that our human brains cope with the idea of less. And possibly a looming recession, it also gives us a sense of control in a completely out of control world right now. We love the idea of simplicity, and I'm seeing minimalism back on my feed. And today we're gonna unpack why most of it is a scam, because I got scammed by it, okay? I'm going to lay out all of the ways that you could possibly get roped into this idea of minimalism online that could end up making all of the things that you're trying to solve actually like bigger problems than they were to begin with. And we will see if I can land the plane and culminate the video in something kind of emotionally connective that hopefully we can all find some peace in. I think the idea is not to necessarily end up trashing an entire idea, but more so to isolate what it is that we're actually all trying to achieve when we go for these kinds of things. So all that said, y'all, it's gonna be a chit-chatty video. I'm gonna give you all a lot of references as we go. Let's go ahead and jump in. A Stanley Cup. I don't need to tell y'all that we have not been in a minimalist mindset lately, okay? TikTok has been telling us to buy everything in sight. This was a gift to me from my friend Rebecca. But I think we all have a sensitivity towards overconsumption and TikTok culture, especially haul culture and things like that. We are not gonna get into all of that. There are entire channels dedicated to that kind of thing. But I think that if you haven't been, I really envy if you've been living under a rock. Like, invite me. Like, I wanna get a rock near yours. I would love a really pleasant rock to live under at the moment. But if you're like me, and the internet seems to just kind of pervade your consciousness against your will, you are aware that we're all doing very inexplicable things with our money, okay?
I have literally spent over $1,000 trying to get the golden boo-boo, like, please be it. Oh my god, please be it, please. Oh my god! Oh my god! The golden boo-boo!
Labubu's might be the greatest recession indicator. In no particular order here, this is just how these things occurred to me, again, based on my experience trying to be a minimalist at some point in my life. Again, the appeal is simplicity. The appeal is that your brain's gonna be quieter because you have fewer things. And let me just say, first of all, that's not the case for everyone, okay? My brain is way happier when I have enough stuff. And a lot of minimalist content knows that. In fact, let's start with disambiguating the difference between different kinds of minimalism, okay? One is essentialism. It is retraining your brain, disciplining your brain to focus on what it is that you need instead of over-consuming through like shopping addiction or absent-minded spending of money, enjoying the shopping process. The pipeline to get your credit card to check out is so easy and seamless now, entirely on purpose, that shopping can be this sort of absent-minded hobby, and dismantling that, untangling that, I think that that is the correct intention of a minimalist or essentialist mindset. I say essentialist because, again, like, I can't pretend that I'm a minimalist, but I do try and focus on what I need because I do get overwhelmed with too much crap. And I think that it might be a little bit of a holdover from like trying minimalism in a very serious way at some point in my life, but everything finds its way back to the middle, and I think that that's something that we should keep in mind throughout the entire video, or honestly throughout our entire like digestion of these kinds of extreme trends, is that you're always gonna find your way back to the middle. You can do that in a way that makes you happy, or you can do that in a way that makes you feel guilty. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, the next kind of minimalism is aesthetic minimalism. Aesthetic minimalism is like you open up West Elm, you know, and you're like, oh wow, I want perfectly white bed sheets and like unfinished wood floors and like rattan hand chandeliers and stuff like that, or like restoration hardware or whatever, where you're looking at this space and you're like, oh, it's so clean, it calms my mind, whatever, but like have fun trying to function in that. Like it gives me anxiety because I can't set anything down, I can't sit down, I feel like I can't interact with anything, I can't use anything, which really just illustrates the difference between the two, right? There's the essentialist mindset of like mental discipline, and then there's just this entirely other thing that's just the appeal of like certain colors and textures and few things bothering your eyes in a space. Like go off, I guess, but do not confuse the two. And then we have this new-ish insidious conflation of the two that I'm seeing on TikTok, and it's being called luxury minimalism.
I went shopping this weekend, found something so incredible. Blazers aren't going anywhere. I'm obsessed.
While it looks like I have a lot of bags, I have like 3. I think it's called a carry-all. I really keep it for decoration. Keep it for decoration.
And luxury minimalism is, I think, maybe the scariest one if it's something you're actually choosing to embark on in the kind of short-term way that we think of trends these days. You know, because it's like when we're talking about adopting a trend or adopting an aesthetic, often we are talking about buying into that aesthetic and trying to achieve it as quickly as possible to be able to then flex on the aesthetic publicly so that people see it on social media. And I mean, if you're immune to that, fantastic. This is a video for people who are maybe not immune to that. And you might still get something out of it even if you are. Either way, the philosophy around luxury minimalism is that you have fewer, better things. And I think that fewer, better things might be one of the most dangerous, misleading, insidious phrases that has been introduced to our zeitgeist, because it misleads you into thinking that overspending per item is going to save you money in the long run. But what you end up doing if you're never tackling the mindset around kind of absent-minded shopping and things like that is that you end up just spending more per item and still accumulating just as much stuff. That's making it worse, right? So are there real luxury minimalists? Yeah, I kind of consider myself, in terms of like the luxury things that I own, to be a minimalist. I have a lot of luxury, I have a lot of makeup in general, but like in terms of the way that I interact, a little about me, the way that I interact with really expensive things is that like, I grew up having a major scarcity mindset, and so like when I get something expensive, I treasure it. I get endorphins every time I think about it, and when I wear it, I'm like, oh my god, it's the thing, and I will like text my friends and be like, I'm wearing the thing, you know? And I did realize at some point that like spending money, like that kind of luxury money, on stuff I'm gonna wear a lot versus stuff I'm only gonna wear on a special occasion is actually better, because it's like I want to get more like use out of something, lower the cost per wear or whatever. But I still regard those kinds of things as special occasions. I don't let it become a thing that is like, I can afford one of these, therefore I don't need to adjust anything else in my life. I just need to think of myself as someone who can afford these giant ticket items. It's like, no, they are precious, they are important, and I really only invest in like specific things. I'm not a big handbag collector. I like a leather shoe, okay? I've been carrying the same wallet since I was oh my god, I think like 21, and I'm 38. But luxury minimalism is something that can very easily be a slippery slope into gigantic amounts of overspending, or multiplying your spending by orders of magnitude in pursuit of what? Our first topic, the capsule, okay? I think that the capsule, again, fewer better things, evil. It is an evil concept. If it's something that brings your mind peace and you already have a wardrobe that makes you feel really at peace when you look at it, if it's like your current wardrobe but pared down, A+. You know what I mean? If that's something that really helps your brain, totally fine. Again, we're talking about minimalism, true minimalism, the kind that heals you, as something that's a mental discipline where you actually buy less stuff, not something that tells you what the next thing to buy is. Ooh, yeah. But if you're like me, and you like things being different every day, and your brain is stimulated by color, and you do recognize that you have several personas, not just a strong desire to not think in the morning, then trying to construct a capsule wardrobe in the sense that the internet would like to convince you of is not going to be useful. It's just going to overspend your money on a bunch of things that may or may not fit your lifestyle and that almost always won't actually end up pleasing you in the long run. For me, I know what a full body hell yes feels like in terms of like aesthetic stimulation. That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to buy it, but at the same time, like a capsule wardrobe of like quiet luxury does nothing for me. It doesn't stimulate me in any way. It doesn't satisfy me in any way. Seeing very few things when I look at my wardrobe does not give me any kind of mental peace. And so it's like, I understand that there is a healthy approach to acquiring things that is very separate from someone telling me what items I need in a capsule wardrobe to never have to think about putting an outfit together again in the future, because A, I get bored really easily, and B, you're gonna spend a lot of time and money accumulating the perfect version of what it is that you're seeking in your capsule wardrobe. The perfect t-shirt, the perfect black pants, the perfect black shoes, the perfect turtleneck sweater, whatever, like these timeless pieces. Guess what? Timeless pieces are wildly expensive in most cases, and everybody seems to have an opinion on what makes a really great one, and you can spend so much money in pursuit of the right one for you. It is a huge ordeal. I've done it. It is far more economical, satisfying, and healthy for your mind to practice the kind of discipline that makes you reach for your wallet less. Practice looking at an item and going, that is lovely, and I appreciate that for its loveliness. That does not mean that I need to own it. Because the idea of the perfect capsule wardrobe is a lie. You might see someone who has made it their entire life's work to construct this perfect capsule wardrobe, but that's sort of the point, is that it took them a really long time, and it was something that they felt drawn towards that gives them satisfaction while they're wearing it, while they're interacting with it. I personally, as a human who really enjoys expressing myself through my personal style, do not want my wardrobe or my personal style distilled down to like one color palette or like 30 items or whatever. The appeal of it is that it's going to grant you simplicity and peace of mind, but the fact is our brains are antsy, and if you don't do something to work against that antsiness or to address that antsiness, it's just gonna find somewhere else in your life to light, okay? Spending a fortune curating the perfect capsule wardrobe by someone else's standards, might I add, is not going to actually bring you mental peace. It's just gonna make you broke. The next thing to really make note of when you are consuming minimalism content, because honestly, I still will consume minimalism content because it helps me clean my house. You know what I mean? I'll also watch Hoarders Buried Alive. That also makes me clean my house. Like, we all consume content differently. Either way, something to keep in mind is that influencers are always going to find a way to monetize. Monetization and true minimalism don't go together. So it's actually really hard to find an influencer with any kind of traction or online clout or anything like that that's actually going to motivate you to be a minimalist who doesn't already have another job or something, because the way that we make money is by influencing. And influencing is influencing purchases. Let's call it exactly what it is. I buy all this makeup and it is insanely overwhelming, and I educate myself and I try to offer my expertise to help people make the most educated purchases in their lives. But like, I am not delusional about the fact that I am giving people advice on what to buy so that I can be a conduit for that, okay? I consider myself someone who has built a ton of trust with people, and I take that extremely seriously. It's a privilege. But with that in mind, the idea that someone could be promoting minimalism and also selling you something, it doesn't work. And so when they're showing you a storage solution or the perfect version of this one item for your capsule wardrobe or something like that, bear in mind that that person is riding a wave of popularity online for a topic that people are interested in, often for reasons of like mental overwhelm, and they will take advantage of that by selling you this storage solution on Amazon or whatever that isn't actually going to solve the inherent problem. A very recent example is the hijacking of underconsumption core.
An underconsumption thought I've been having. You should always get the exact version of the thing that you want. When it comes to like designer handbags, don't buy a dupe. The Skims top you want, like, don't buy the dupe. Buy the real thing. You will always be so happy.
Everything gets hijacked by monetization, and it's encouraged by the platforms as well, because the platforms benefit from you monetizing also. They want people to watch ads, they want people to click on ads, they want people to buy things through TikTok Shop. And so when you find these influencers who are sparking ideas like underconsumption core, and they're like project panning and things like that, those are not the creators and influencers who are ultimately going to gain a ton of traction on the platforms, because they're not really selling anything. They're selling an idea, they're selling a philosophy, but they're not selling a product. And so those aren't the things that are most likely in the long term going to be super successful from a content standpoint, and they're not going to be the things that are going to get served to you long term over time. As any trend matures, which takes so little time on the internet now, you're going to see words like minimalism get hijacked by people selling you something, and that is an influencer's job. It's just important to keep our feet on the ground about that. Influencers aren't evil, but an influencer who is trying to sell you something, sell you an item of any kind under the guise of like disciplined minimalism, they can't possibly completely have your best interests at heart. It just is what it is. The next thing to bear in mind is that minimalism as an aesthetic is very appealing online, especially to young people. Young people have more time online than most of us do. And so you're going to see that portrayed as being very popular, but it is also not real at all. Like at all. It is just that. It's an aesthetic. It is people putting things right there in frame for a photo or for a short form video to show this like very appealing collection of minimalist looking items, all in the right lighting and things like that. And you're gonna go, I need to buy that pin or those headphones or that vase or whatever, because that's going to make me a minimalist like this person, as long as those are the only things that I own, when that person edited that thing to death and everything outside of that frame looks like real life. It doesn't look like that. And what those images do, I'm gonna speak very personally here and be very candid, is they promote perfectionism. And perfectionism is so insidious. As someone who has suffered for many, many years and worked against and like healed from and whatever, but still it's always in the back of my mind, I have struggled with disordered eating my entire life. Any kind of movement towards a perfectionist extreme is just an eating disorder by another name in my life. And I try to stay away from extremes like that in general, but it can be very, very appealing. And I just want to like bring awareness to the fact that that can be a pipeline towards obsessive thinking, towards moving your brain towards a need for extreme. And making those kinds of lifestyle changes can be really invigorating initially, but can easily, especially again, as I'm talking about myself, turn into something very obsessive. I want to take a minute and actually talk about perfectionism, because it's a really misunderstood topic, and in my real life I talk about it every chance that I get, because I have like journaled myself to death on perfectionism. I've been through so much therapy about perfectionism. I grew up in a kind of erratic environment where like it was hard to get attention without achieving, at least for me, and in order to stay in kind of a peaceful place in a kind of chaotic universe, I did well to behave myself. There's also a lot of like religious trauma and stuff like that, like puritanical culture and things like that, that pervade a lot of our consciousnesses. Even as we mature into adulthood and things like that, they're just like stuff that's stuck in there, right? And I just want to put words to it from the way that I look at it, and that is that perfectionism is not the pursuit of perfection, okay? It sounds like it is, but it's not. It is actually the pursuit of assimilation in order to be safe. Safe can mean a lot of things. Safe can mean truly safe, safe can mean emotionally safe. Either way, we get into a mindset where showing all of ourselves is dangerous. It can make us unlovable, it can put us in actual danger, things like that. And to be perfect is often often a way of escaping the potential danger of chaos. Unfortunately, and fortunately, chaos is where life lives. Chaos is where curiosity happens. Perfectionism is the diametric opposite and mortal enemy of creativity, self-expression, curiosity, all the things that make us feel alive. And so the more you move towards perfectionism, call it an eating disorder, call it anything you want, like adherence to an aesthetic or something like that, the harder you chase perfectionism, the further you're getting away from your true self. And let me tell you, those roads never intersect again. It is so important to note that perfectionism is never going to lead you to the satisfaction of self-actualization. Self-actualization being, I know who the hell I am. I look at myself in the mirror and I love me. Perfectionism's never gonna get you there. Chasing down an aesthetic is never gonna get you there. You're never gonna look at yourself in the mirror after trying to assimilate to another person or another movement's idea of idealism. Even if you achieve it to absolute perfection, you're never going to look in the mirror, either metaphorically or literally, and be satisfied. Take it from me. Beauty happens when you love you. Perfectionism's not gonna get you there. Adjacent to that, and our next topic is beware of the clean girl. Okay, we are all familiar with this, unless, like I said, call me if you've got a really good real estate agent who can refer me to a phenomenal rock to live under. I want like a really nice one, you know, lake views, but like I'm at the age where I'm welcoming the rock I want to live under. Okay, I'm manifesting it. But clean girl, quiet luxury, luxury minimalism. What it's really doing is it is assigning morality to cleanliness, okay? Clean, good. Clean, pure. And I'm not gonna even get into like the socioeconomic or like racial overtones of that because it's implicit, okay? I don't think I need to explain that to anyone, but like even the briefest, most cursory perusal, I love when I put together a bunch of SAT words, of TikTok's luxury minimalism talk. Is that what you would call it? It's like a subreddit, it's a talk. Luxury minimalism talk, you're gonna hear voiceovers of people being like, I wanna be defined by who I was, not what I had. That's how I wanna be remembered. And I'm like, morality, like you're essentially condemning other people who have more stuff than you and being like, well, you're just trying to be remembered by all your stuff. Like, let's take a step back and observe the fact that a video like that is typically panning a space that most of us can't afford, you know? It's like, oh, you might have few things, but the place that you live is aesthetically beautiful in a minimalist way to begin with. Your voiceover of your philosophy on life is very much leaving out some large details as to how you got where you are and how comfortable your life actually is. Why you can even talk about minimalism in this sense is because you have everything that you need already. Not the least of which being that luxury minimalism, clean girl beauty, all that stuff. I didn't mention this before, but it shows everything new. Everything is brand new. Nothing is like worn in or used. And so that is another reason that like we start spending money on things because we look at it and we go, oh, that's on Amazon? That's a really inexpensive way for me to achieve, I don't know, one of the 6 things that this person had in their minimalism flat lay in perfect natural light. I'm gonna buy that thing and then that's gonna make me a minimalist because it's so beautiful, it's so aesthetically pleasing. And this is a cross section that is very representative. It's a perfect representative sample of the rest of this person's life that I'm watching, and therefore I can also achieve that if I buy this thing that they have. And it's only X amount of dollars. That's something that I can reasonably afford because it's on Amazon and it's cheap. Do you see how that can become a really slippery slope? Newness is very appealing, but if we don't learn to love and value something being worn in, we are going to be buried in brand new, sterile, weird, unfamiliar things for the rest of our lives instead of growing an organic life. I love having an organic life where things are just tactile, where I feel cozy in my space. When I first moved into this house after I got divorced, I basically furnished the whole thing in one go because I had to make a life for my child that felt normal, okay? It was an extremely expensive thing to do. But when I did, I brought like Rebecca and her husband over and they were like, yeah, it feels like an Airbnb in here. And I was like, yeah, I don't really know what to do about that. It's really weird, you know? Then my kid came to the house and he made some messes. And I was like, yeah, live in a space. I need life force. I made art and I hung it on the walls. Things just started to organically express themselves. Yes, there were moments where I was like, I need to do this more quickly just because I do feel like this space is kind of like chokingly sterile. But at the same time, it goes beyond it being an aesthetic of like, oh, I like maximalism more than minimalism, or I like color more than neutrals. It's about the feeling of something being alive, the feeling of something being welcoming, and the feeling of something not being new. You can always wash your couch cushions. You can always clean your baseboards. You can get a really beautiful, pristine look out of just about anything. You don't need to buy something new in order to achieve it. And we all need to warm up to the idea that something being used for a long time is like what often we place value on when it's like handed down to us from our like parents or grandparents. We're just like, oh my God, they've had this for so long. And I mean, yeah, most of our goods don't really like last all that well because they're not designed to, but you can still find things like that, especially clothing items and stuff where it's like, if I take good care of this and also like wear it in and really enjoy it, by the time it's time to pass it on or throw it away or whatever, I'm going to feel like I really put my life force into this thing and it integrated its way into my life. And that's also the way that, like, again, heirlooms exist, is because things got used and loved. You wouldn't want a brand new teddy bear, you know? The last thing that I want to touch on is the ultimate result of these kinds of big life overhauls that almost always happen in the short term, if not the long term, and that is guilt. Attached to morality and perfectionism is the ultimate inevitability of guilt. Guilt is what's going to happen when you set unrealistic goals, unrealistic standards for yourself. You aspire to perfectionism. You might be able to achieve it for a minute, but then when things inevitably find center again, which they should, instead of feeling a sense of comfort like you have ownership over your reality and that you can manage things being chaotic and still find peace within yourself, instead of that, it feels like a moral failing, like you have betrayed yourself because you haven't been able to stick to this very strict set of morals that you've set forth for yourself, honestly, unwittingly in a lot of ways. So say you bought something that you really liked that doesn't fit into your capsule wardrobe because it's a different color or a different texture. Now that's keeping you up at night because you did something so chaotic and not in the plan. When what really is happening is that you are yearning for self-expression in a way that spilled out the sides because you're not giving it a really good channel to express itself out in the world, and that you're actually trying to answer a question that you didn't ask in the first place, which is, how do I simplify something that I really enjoy? I don't really make a lot of personal style content because to me it's always been so straightforward. It's something I solved a long time ago. For me, it's a very simple equation of how much you care times what you like divided by how much you want to spend. And how much you want to spend also means lifestyle, you know? Because I'm going to say something pretty controversial here. We are talking about a lot of like mutual exclusives that end up getting conflated for some reason. Like we talked about earlier, it's like you can't be influencing me to buy less and then also telling me to buy something. By the same token, I think that having a passion and enjoying developing your personal style is mutually exclusive from having a capsule wardrobe that solves getting dressed for the rest of your life in theory, and you never have to buy another item again. Like if you enjoy expressing yourself through your personal style, don't try to make a typical capsule wardrobe. Should you have wardrobes and wardrobes full of stuff because you're completely out of control? No, but that has nothing to do with a capsule wardrobe. That kind of restraint is not something that happens by buying the right things. That kind of restraint is something that happens by rewiring your brain and not buying anything at all. And that equation and the fact that so much content tries to conflate the two is like basically telling you it's not that you have too many things, it's that you have the wrong things, or that you do have too many things, and also it will solve that for you to buy the right things. That is the perfect, most reduced formula to equal out to just making yourself feel guilty and making yourself feel like you didn't adhere to these standards that you set forth for yourself, when what we really need to be asking ourselves is what makes us happy and what makes us feel overwhelmed, and start there. Minimalism is something that can be a really positive mental discipline, but it's something that you decide what it means to you. And if you find yourself adding things to cart because a minimalist influencer told you to, just take a beat, okay? So this brings me into my final closing thoughts here. Again, this is where I'm gonna try and like land the plane and do something that like hopefully leaves you with some positivity and somewhere to go from this instead of just like crapping all over minimalist content. Movements like minimalism come from a very well-meaning place. We shop too much, okay? We shop mindlessly. We end up spending money that we're then like ashamed of later. But that's the issue, is that the content on minimalism in a lot of cases, especially the kind that actually gets traction and is popular, is just trying to get you to spend money to achieve the appearance of someone else's idea of an ideal lifestyle. And you have to stop and ask yourself, is what I'm trying to achieve the peace of mind that I think that this would give me? In which case it is a lot of mental discipline work that you need to do, and there is content out there for that, but it's a lot harder to find. Or does luxury minimalism as an aesthetic appeal to me, in which case just pump the brakes, because if it's not something that you're already collecting towards in your life, you need to probably take a look at your budget. Are you going to Target and Home Goods kind of passively and like dropping $100 here and there without realizing it, that you could be putting towards this more luxury lifestyle that you're trying to build? Okay, like let's, again, it comes back to mental discipline. It comes back to doing the kind of hard, sticky stuff that you don't really want to face versus the very easy pathway of just buying the thing that looks like it's going to solve the problem because your favorite minimalist influencer appears to have a perfect life and you want a piece of that. That's just as bad as buying 50 Stanley Cups. On the other side of that, even from a mental discipline standpoint, it's important to keep in mind that a lot of this mindset is built on shoulds and restriction and guilt, okay? So even if it is something where you do want to have the mental discipline to restructure your budget and change the way that you interact with the things that you consume, carefully assess the way that you and your personality in your life have interacted with those kinds of feelings in the past. Like, do you deal well with restriction? Do you deal well with extremes that might start to consume your brain? Like, for example, I can't have a Fitbit, you know what I mean? Like, I can't keep track of my steps. I'll lose my mind. Cannot do it. Or are you the kind of person who retaliates against those things and you're gonna end up saying, F it, and going all the way in the other direction, really just blowing the entire concept to begin with? The unexciting truth is that moderation is where you're probably going to land, and that moderation is actually the best approach. Moderation doesn't make for very compelling content, but I think we need to be talking more about the things that do compel us when we are in a balanced mindset, okay? Because when things are allowed to breathe in your life and you are not trying to keep yourself from changing, what you find is your own voice. You find creativity, you find curiosity. You often find on self-examination why you're doing the things that you're doing. And a lot of times, no matter what it is that we're buying or buying too much of, it's coming from a place of lack elsewhere. And so I invite you to interrogate those kinds of feelings. If minimalism is something that really appeals to you, try to unpack what it is that's feeling out of control in your life, because that's what we're trying to do with minimalism, is we're trying to get things in control, and we're hoping that we're going to be the kind of person who can achieve it and maintain it for a lifetime. It's a noble pursuit, but it has such high risk of doing the exact opposite, spending a bunch of your money and driving you crazy. Actually, I wasn't planning on saying this, but I will say If you haven't read No Bad Parts, it's a book on internal family systems, which is a very unapproachable name for what it is. It is actually a very effective sort of therapy that, yes, there are a lot of really brilliant people who are trained in it, but it is also something that's a great tool to use for your own kind of meditation and like unpacking your own brain and stuff. I've had many, many breakthroughs as a result of that book. Look at me trying to sell you stuff. I'm not a minimalism influencer, okay? I never claimed to be. Anyway, y'all, I think that like the entire philosophy of life right now is just learning to cope with the chaos and the mess. I think adulthood surprises us every single day in its ability to just be so annoyingly complicated. So no one can be blamed for wanting to simplify their lives. I just hope that this helped to kind of illuminate the dangers and the potential pitfalls and things like that of this kind of content, because I speak from experience of wanting to have more control over my life in certain times, and that this is not, for me at least, the answer. So if y'all enjoyed this, please give the video a thumbs up. If you want to, consider subscribing while you're here. We would love to have you. I'll put a video up here that I think that you will enjoy if you liked this one. Thank y'all so much for being here and for hanging out with me today. I love you so much. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.